The Safavid dynasty began in 1501, but its origins date back to the 14th century. As they grew, they became spiritual leaders for the groups that opposed the Ottomans.
The leader of the Safavids, Junayd, was exiled from Azerbaijan, but he built up a Turkmen army known as the Kizilbash. He eventually died, but his son, Ismail, went to Azerbaijan and took over. Ismail built the Kizilbash into an organized military force and went on a huge decade-long conquest, taking control of parts of eastern Anatolia, parts of modern-day Iraq, all of Kurdistan, and the central Iranian plateau.
As Ismail expanded Safavid territory, he initially did so without the aid of gunpowder weapons. The Safavids only started using gunpowder weapons after being defeated by the Ottomans in 1514 at Chaldiran.
As the Shia Safavids gained more power, the Sunni Ottomans increasingly viewed them as a threat. The Ottomans were especially concerned about growing support for the Safavids in central and eastern Anatolia, so they invaded. The Safavids lost at Chaldiran, and it was largely a result of gunpowder weapons. It ultimately led to the Safavid Empire becoming a gunpowder empire. Ismail worked to rebuild his weakened army by introducing a musket corps. His successors would take further steps to build the Safavids' arsenal, allowing their empire to grow stronger.
After the defeat at Chaldiran, Ismail withdrew from governing. During this period, the Safavid army recovered, but there were still concerns about its organization. Moreover, in Ismail's absence, Kizilbash clans began battling each other for the power.
When Tahmasp, Ismail's 10-year-old son, ascended the throne in 1524, he inherited an empire that was unstable and plagued by factionalism. In the 1530s, Tahmasp started to consolidate his power. In part, he did this by reducing the power and influence of the Kizilbash. In 1587, Muhammad was forced to abdicate to his son, 16-year-old Abbas. Abbas went on to become the greatest Safavid leader and served until 1629. A strong and independent ruler for most of his reign, Abbas sought to maximize personal control over the empire and centralize power. He worked to develop Persia into a bureaucratic state and implemented policies similar to
Tahmasp
to limit attempts, particularly by the Kizilbash, to undermine his power. Like Tahmasp, Abbas employed Ghulam from Armenia, Georgia, and Circassia. These soldiers formed the basis of a standing, paid army, similar to the Ottoman Janissaries. They were also equipped with modern gunpowder weapons. In contrast, the Kizilbash continued to emphasize cavalry warfare as part of their social status.
Unlike the Kizilbash, Ghulam soldiers lacked tribal affiliations and were only loyal to the Shah. They also converted to Shia Islam. Importantly, this professional fighting force ensured that the Kizilbash would not be able to dominate the military. Abbas moved his children to the harem in an attempt to prevent them from fighting over the throne, but this just led to them being raised in ways unfit for ruling. Their empire lacked necessary gold and silver and had to get it from foreign resources, resulting in a fragile economy which would soon be dominated by Europeans. This eventually led to the empires being destroyed through many ways, such as infighting, invasions, and poor economic choices. As Shah, Ismail was very involved in managing state affairs. He hired Persians to handle governance and fiscal management, and built the Kizilbash into an organized military force. Safavid's loss at Chaldiran led the Safavid Empire to become a gunpowder empire. Ismail planned to rebuild the weakened army by introducing musket corps. His successors would later take further steps to build the Safavid's arsenal.
On each side of the
Median-e Shah
The-
Ali Kapu
palace was in the west, the Shah Mosque in the south, the Mosque of
Sheikh Lotfallah
in the east, and an entrance to the Grand Bazaar with murals showing Abbas military victories in the north. Each building represented an element of the Safavid Empire: the monarchy, religion, military, and trade. Tahmasp was the first to produce coins in Persian rather than Arabic. He also tried to spread Shi'ism and standardize Shia religious practices by basing them around scripture.
The Safavid dynasty origins date back to the 14th century, where Sufi became the spiritual leader and gained political clout by becoming involved in Turkmen tribal affairs. Junayd was exiled from Azerbaijan because of his political ambitions. He built a Turkmen confederacy, and years later his son Ismail went back to Azerbaijan and took over. He then started replacing high-ranking Turkmen with Persian officials. Abbas established new trading policies to bring Armenians in, who were known as expert merchants. Abbas built new infrastructure to support trade, such as new roads. The leaders were tolerant of people from different ethnic and religious backgrounds. They had internal social conflicts, like fighting for power and some
alienation,
The Safavids only started using their gunpowder after their loss against the Ottomans in battle, as the Ottomans had gunpowder and could easily overpower the Safavids. The Safavids built a musket-based army because of this, and on top of that, they also employed ghulam, which were slave armies, and were very loyal. They gave these slave armies gunpowder weapons too, and they became the main fighting force, becoming stronger than the Kizilbash, but their leader made sure not to completely get rid of the Kizilbash. This new gunpowder-wielding army was much stronger and allowed them to protect their borders and expand much easier. This success was short-lived, though. One of the reasons their empire fell was because their leader moved their children to the harem, where they weren't raised like typical rulers. This made them unfit for the job, so their empire was weakened. Another reason was because they didn't own very much gold or silver, and had to rely on outside resources to get them. This weakened their economy, and led to Europeans dominating the market. More economic issues were caused by things like overseas trade routes, meaning they would get less foot traffic, or stuff like failing crops that wouldn't bring them as much money. With so little money, they couldn't fund their army, and eventually their empire was torn apart from both inside and outside sources.